Hello, Backstitchers. Okay, we're going to, we're on our final day, day 5. Yesterday, we covered our weights, our nuts and bolts, in your base clay, just the plain white or the scraps. Today, we're going to be, finishing up with adding, the color clay, like the wood grain and the threading around the middle. And then attaching Edna to your weight, and then we'll be done. So let's go ahead and get started. Make sure today you will need to make sure that your board is clean, because we're going to be working with clay that is actually going to be seen on your pattern weight. So make sure your board is clean so you don't have any or you minimize your dust specks and avoid any clay transfer, and make sure that your hands are clean. I've said it in other videos before, but if you use lotion on your hands, you kind of want to try not to have a lot of lotion or excess lotion, just because it can mess with how dry or sticky your clay is. If you have lotion on your hands, your clay could get really tacky and sticky, and you don't want that. And then you have to break out your cornstarch and try to get the try to get it back to where it needs to be, and then you run the risk of drying it out. So, all right. I'm living on coffee today, so all right. Now, today, if you look at the picture, this one right here, we're working on the spool, and you can't see it really, but we're going to be doing wood grain. So you need your brown, your black, which I have some right here. So for this part, we want to cut off. Remember, I already showed you the lines in your clay. So we're going to be cutting off this chunk right at this line. Okay, and then with that chunk, we're going to cut off a third of that. And then you're going to take a small piece. It's always good to not add enough, because you can always add extra to get it to the darker brown that you want. But if you add too much, then you're going to have to add in more brown or white or yellow to get it to lighten back up, and you're going to be using a lot of clay to do that. So I start off with small chunks of black. I would say that this is a bigger pea size, and I'm going to just smash them together, and I'm going to start. What we're doing is we're making a darker brown color. To swirl in with our other. Now, you can add whatever colors you want to. Sorry, excuse me. to make your wood grains. Now, for me, this is like, well, it's a little bit darker brown, but when I look at wood, to me, wood is more certain type of woods. The type of woods that I like they're a redwood. They have red tones in it. So basically right now, this is just, if you can see, this one is a little bit more darker, but to me it's just still brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a small, very, very small, again, like pea size of my red. And a very small, well, I won't even say very small, but maybe the size of like a lima bean. Put that in there. And start mixing that together. And this is going to give it some of that red that I like. Now, if you look, you can see the swirls in it. That's basically what we're going to be doing with this, but we don't want to see those yellow and red swirls. So we're going to be mixing this until this is like one solid color. So I still want it to be a little bit more red. So I'm going to add more red. This time I'm adding like a lima bean size. And I want it to be a little bit more dark, so I'm adding about another pea size of black. And like I said, this is just my preference for how I want the wood to look, or like the color that I want the wood to look. If you want just brown, you could do that. Or if you want to lighten yours up, you could add white. A little bit of white, and you could add yellow, or you could just use the brown right straight out of the pack and not have any like wood grain in it. Okay, so now let's see. I'm gonna hold this and see if I can get it better. So you could see like the difference between the two now. Okay, see the difference? It's more red and this is just brown. Blech. So now that this is the color that I wanted, we have this color. And I'm not going to change the tone of this. You could if you wanted to. But for time purpose, we're just going to leave it brown. Because I know that these videos, especially making Edna, it was kind of, you know, long to make. Now, with this color, we want to make sure that this color is also incorporated into the bottom or the other top piece. So we're going to cut this in half to make sure that, again, there is some kind of like balance in there. So roll it up in a ball, cut it in half, put half to the side, and we'll use that on the other part. And then this one, we softened it up, and you're going to roll it into a log. I'm going to go ahead and touch it down. Take the brown that you made, you can see my hands. Take the brown that you made, roll that into a log, about the same length as the other, and you're going to twist, right? And then roll it into a ball. Roll it out, twist into a ball. You want to do this, I don't know, 2 or 3 times until you get this swirl effect that you like. Now, see the swirling in there? I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and start rolling out my brown into a disc. Now this one, remember, we're just using as your frosting to cover one of these pieces. So when I do this, I always try to do a little bit of it and try to keep it in a circle. If you continue to do this, or if you're already working clay, the thicker you leave your clay, the easier it is to work with, and as far as not being able to see like bumps and bumps in like small imperfections in your base clay. But if you keep working, if this is something that you want to keep doing and you keep working at it, you can work in like getting your clay, rolling it out thinner. So you can see all the swirls. See all the swirls in there? Looks like wood. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and lay this on my parchment paper again. And I like the swirl pattern of this already. So I'm going to use this as my top, the top that I can see. So like I said, you need to take your disc pieces and establish which one you want as the very top where Edna's going to be sitting. So if she is going to be sitting on this top, then this is going to be the bottom, which no one's really going to see unless they pick it up and like look at it. So this is the one that I'm going to use for my top. This one, between these two sides, obviously this one is the side that is like, if you pick it up and look at it, this is the side that you're going to be able to see fully. This side is going to be the side that you just see the rim of this. So this right here really doesn't matter because it's going to be covered up by the spool. So I like the pattern, the swirl pattern of the wood on this one. So I'm going to use it as the top to where Edna is going to sit. And I'm going to place that. You want to be careful as you place it because, like, when you put it on there, it'll stick. Like, okay? You can, if your clay is at the right consistency, you can pick it up and move it. But if your clay is really sticky and you pick it up, you might tear your clay. So you kind of on your first, you want to put it down where you think you're gonna be able to make sure you have enough to wrap your edges, right? So put it in the middle. And same as before, you want it this time, you want to make sure that you're working nice and neat, because this you'll be able to see. So I'm just working, getting my edges up. And right now I'm concerned about my edge here. All this in the center where it's bunching, we'll work that out. So as I go, kind of smooth your edge out. Working on a piece of parchment, it's easier to twist your work as you go. Okay, so all right, so this is what it looks like so far. And obviously, this is why I said this is where Edna is going to be sitting. This is still nice and flat and no like air bubbles or anything like that. The underside is the part that we're going to work on. So you're going to flatten this out as much as you can with your fingers. Remember, the center is not really important, because right in here is where your spool is going to connect with the top, or the actual spool with thread on it is going to connect with the wooden part. So I am just concerned about the edge, because that's the part that's going to be exposed. So, and I push to the center. Now, as you're doing this, you may see like air bubbles pop up. Go ahead and get those taken care of. Just poke a hole in them and smush the air up. And when you smush the air up, you're also smushing the hole that you made back together to seal it. So as you can see, now you have like a big, like extra mound of clay. What I do is I just take my blade and I start it level with the outer side, and I keep it as level as possible. I just drag it across the middle to get rid of that extra clay. Turn it, do the same thing. Turn it, do the same thing. Turn it, do the same thing. In doing that, you may expose some of your clay underneath, which is fine. All you have to do is just gently take your finger, press and smooth, press and smooth. Like I said, the center, if there's a little bit of white sticking out, or your base, your under, then if there's a part that you can't cover up, just take a piece of the clay that you just scraped off and push it in and then smooth it out. You don't have to worry about like because it's swirl anyway. So once we've got that taken care of, I lightly take my rolling pin and go over to get a nice smooth, and I'm not pressing really hard. All I'm doing is putting a little bit of pressure and rolling, turning, and I'm just doing this to get it to be a little bit even. Same as you did yesterday, very gently, like a wheel. So now, doing this, I got air bubbles. So I want to get those out. Now another trick, if you really get into this and you want to keep doing this and you want to do a wood grain again, if your finger's not working, you can, sorry about that, if your finger's not working, you can always take one of your ball tools and smooth it out, and then use your finger to smooth everything. So if you really are gonna stick with it and you want to do like more of this, so I got these at Michael's, and they are in the stamping section, but they also have like these that you can use. They have them in the scrapbooking section, the cake section, and the stamping section. I got these in the stamping section. This is actually, it's wood grain. And all you would do is just place it on, gently press, lift up. So now you got the swirl of your color clay, but if you want to use that, now you have wood grain as well. You don't have to push very hard. I just gave it a light push down, same thing, and then it still stays the same on the other side. Okay, so now that we did that, this is going to be the underside. This is going to be the top side. So if you look on the picture that we did, or that I did earlier, you can see that there's like a groove in there, and then there's a groove in there, right? So the way that I did that is on the rim, all I did was I took my clay knife, not the sharp end, but the blunt end, and I just made a line in the middle to act as my guide. You don't want to push very hard. You're not trying to get to your base clay. You're just making a line to follow, like an outline. I'm barely pushing it. I'm just making an indentation in the clay. So See the indentation? And then what you can do is you take your pointed silicone tool and where you made that line, you just drag it. Just push and drag. Not with necessarily the point, but more of like the edge right here. And keep doing that until you go all the way around and you're back there. Now, if you hold it gentle enough, like, yeah, some of your wood grain is gonna go, but wood grain is not perfect anyways. I just think it gives it more character. So if you look on, okay, now if you look on the top, you can see the indentation right there. So same thing, except for you take your ball tool, and I use the little one, and I just, if your clay is too sticky, you can do a light coating of your cornstarch, which someone took mine, so give me a second, I'll be right back. Okay. So when I say light, I just take my finger like this. I just go do a light dusting over the edge. It'll make your tool slide really smoother, and it won't feel like you're getting caught. See? Take your ball tool and lightly go over. So I use the smallest ball for my first and just make an indentation like that. Now if you want it wider, you can go ahead, take the other end, the next size up, and just go over, just gently pressing. Now you don't want to press too hard, you're just slightly pressing. If you want to go even deeper, just make another pass around the circle. So in doing that, it's pushing the clay, it's dispersing the clay. Now it gives me, when it pushed the clay up here, gave me kind of hard, like a hard line. So I just take my finger and just gently push those edges down a little bit, and it smooths them out so that they're not so harsh. Now, so we got that part done. Now we flip it over, and again, you want to be gentle because of your wood grains or whatever that are showing. If you smash down or push down too hard, you're going to push clay out, and it'll deform a little bit, but it might just give it an extra character. So I'm going to do a light dusting of cornstarch so I don't have to press as hard to get those indentations. Okay, so I'm going to start on that with a small tool. Again, barely pushing. Okay, and then now since I wanted to widen on the other end, I'm also going to do that here. Okay, now go back through. I'm smoothing down the harsher edges that got pushed up. Okay, so now you got one side done. Right. Okay, now stuff that we had left over from cutting the top off. I don't know why it keeps doing that. The stuff that we had left over from cutting the top off, we can add it to this because I mean it's the same color. And then we cut off another chunk of brown. Start making it pliable. Okay, so now we roll this out. That might be a little bit too much, so I'm going to cut a chunk of that off. Now this, the red that we set aside earlier, we can go ahead, and since we've been working with strictly browns, either the brown from the package or the browns that we mixed, we don't have to worry about our hands right now because all that's on there is brown. Same thing as before. I'm going to roll it out. I'm just going to twist them together. Out. Twist. Okay, last time. Now we're going to again roll it out. Again, you want to roll it out to make sure that there's enough to cover the sides, and ideally to get the middle also covered. If it's sticking too much, you can always do it on a, you can always also do a light coating of cornstarch on your rolling pin if it sticks too much. I just can't caution you enough to be careful how much cornstarch you use, because it really can dry your clay out a lot, and if you have to, it can be a pain in the butt to add in the clay softener to get it back to the state that you need it. Okay, so the only part that I'm worried about is the width here. Okay, so I'm going to look at the marbling, and I like this side the best. So this is going to go in the middle. All right, so now we're going to start pushing the sides. Okay, so we got the middle covered. Smash it down. Again, cut any bulk off in the middle. Okay, so let's smooth down the edges. Not really worried, again, not really worried about the center, because that's where your spool of thread, or your thread, is going to sit. Light just to even out everything. All right. Now we're just doing everything that we did on the first top or bottom that we did. So I'm going through this a little bit faster than we did before. Okay. Kind of looks like a cookie. All right, so we got that in there. Now, since I used the wood pattern on the other one, I'm gonna use, and like, again, I didn't tell you to get these because it's not necessary. But if it is something that you want to do, like this came with all of these on each side. Like this is, I guess, a burlap type. This is stone, like pebbles. This is wood, and you flip it over, and you got like a crosshatch, and then just a design, and then like chevron stripes. So there's 6 different total textures each. So just do a light press. And then use a different section. Give a light press. Now we make our indentation in the grooves in the top part. So I'm just going to rub a little bit of cornstarch so my ball tool doesn't get stuck, because it might be a little bit tacky. So again, we start with the small one and we just go around the edge, pressing very lightly, very gently. Again, if you push too hard, you might go down to the layer of clay that we used as a base. So the white or your scrap might stick out. So again, you don't want to push too hard. Now if you want a little bit wider, just go to the other side, flip your ball tool, go to the next size up, very gently follow that indentation you already made with the smaller side, turn, and then once you're done, those harsh edges, if you don't want them, just take your finger and lightly press down and smooth it out. So you got one side done, and now we can do the other. Again, a little cornstarch on the sides. Okay. Start with the small one. Now, if you had like a circle, like I have these huge, they're like cake tips, like frosting tips. I don't necessarily get them to use for icing, but they do make good like guidelines or cutting tools for, circles, depending on what tip you have. You could use it for indentations, for decorations. Like that's this side, and then this side you could use for another cutting tool or just to make lines. Like, there's tons of stuff around the house that you could use to make textures and to use as tools. Just like I said, there's no, you don't have to like have, you don't have to have like all these specific type tools. Is it nice to have exactly the tool that you need to do something that you want? Like, use a silicone tool that has like, you know, that little rounded edge to make a mouth so you don't have to carve it out with a toothpick. Yeah, it's great. But again, there are times that where I need to make very small detail that none of my tools can do, so I just use a toothpick or a sewing needle. I don't necessarily have like a set of round cutouts that make a guideline or make a perfect cutout, a perfect circle. So I mean, I have different size cake tips that I use. So I mean, it's like whatever you find around the house, and like I've, you know, been cleaning the house sometimes, and I'm like, huh, this is a really cool pattern, like something like this that you could push into clay, and then, you know, or you get ready to, there's a knife or something, like a dull knife you're getting ready to throw away, and you're like, oh, you know, I could have used this the last time that I needed to score something, and add that to your collection. I mean, I have like cookie cutters. I use cookie cutters all the time to smooth out, like for the ball that I used, or for the Pixar ball, the ball had to be very, very smooth, and like sometimes your fingers just don't cut it. So I added a light coat of cornstarch, and this is a silicone instep that you put in your shoe. It's that rubber silicone, but it's so smooth that if you put a light at the very end, if you're making a ball, or you have to make a perfect, like the surface has to be perfect, you can take this and just glide it, and it makes it takes out wrinkles, it takes out any fingerprints, anything like that. So having certain clay tools is nice, but there's a lot of things that you can find around your house, or even if you're at the store. Like this thing, so what video I was watching a video, and they were saying that they like to use the silicone makeup sponge to do that with. I couldn't find any, but it was about 2 weeks later. My daughter had to get a pair of new gym shoes, so we were in the shoe store, and I saw those on one of the end caps, and I was like, that is basically the same thing as like the silicone makeup applicator. So I picked that up, and I did find later I did find a makeup applicator, which it is thicker, but the workspace is a lot smaller. I actually prefer to use this because it gives me more room to work with, whereas this, it is a little bit thicker, but they feel exactly the same, they move exactly the same, but this gives me more room to grip and bend as I need. This is like, it's just smaller. So like I said, you know, tools are not, oh, well, you can't use this or you can't use that. It's basically whatever helps you to get to your end product. That's the tool that you need. Okay, so now you can see my hands are covered in brown, and we don't want that because we're going to start working with red. So clean my board, and in working with, you can see a little bit of the brown coloring coming off. You can use, you could run to the sink real quick if it's really matted on there or really smushed into your skin. And wash your hands real quick. I'm just going to use the baby wipe, because if I go out there, my dogs will wake up and they'll want to come in here and they'll want me to pet them, and I don't have time. All right, so we've got Edna done, and we've got the top and the bottom part of the spool done. So now all we have to do is the middle part of the spool with the thread, and then place Edna on top, or secure her to the top, and then cook her in the oven. Kind of sounds morbid to cook someone in the oven, but hey. All right. So look at your pieces that you've already done for the top and the bottom. You might decide you may actually, because for me, like now that they're made, I actually like this one better for the top for Edna to be sitting on. Whereas this one, I would like better for the bottom. So I'm going to set them down on the table as how they would be assembled. The bottom, the middle, and then the top. So we're going to set the top off to the side. We're going to take our bottom, and I want to put, for me, I'm going to put my parchment paper down just so that way when we're wrapping the thread around, I can just, like that. So I'm going to make sure that my clay, my spool, this part and this part are going to stick together. I don't want any of the cornstarch, or not a lot of it anyways, to be left on there. So I'm just going to take a little bit of acetone. I'm just going to sweep the middle. I'll rub down the middle real quick. And you can actually see that it kind of gets a little bit tacky again. All right. Make sure that's cleaned off. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to place it right in the middle. Now I look at it from the top down. That way I can see it. I can see everything, and I can see that this is in the middle. If you look at it like this, it may look like it's in the middle, and I've done this before, and it's actually like, it'll look like it's in the middle because you don't realize that your body is more to one side than the other. So that's why I make sure that you're straight on and straight down. Because I've also done it where I'm just looking like this. It may be centered, but it's back more than it should be. So once you get it there, you just give a light, just give it a gentle push down, and you'll know it's attached because you can pick it up. Okay, so now we get to add the thread. So what we're going to do is, I'm not changing the thread color. And again, you can use whatever, if your favorite color is purple or black or yellow or blue, doesn't matter what thread color you use. I just chose red because that's the Incredibles. Their super suits are made from basically red fabric. So that's why I chose red. I cut off one brick, or at the first line. I just cut a chunk off. You don't need to really measure. And you're gonna end up winding this around, but I will tell you that the thinner you go, the longer it's gonna take. But also, the thicker you go, the more, I guess, it's not going to be as, I don't know, thread-like. So I kind of like to go in the middle ground. But then again, like I said before, it's totally up to you and what you want, how you want your piece to look. So, the red is kind of, maybe it's because of the dye in the red, but red is always like, for me, it always has, no matter what brand I've used, and no matter like how I've tried to get the freshest brick, it's always a little bit stiff when you first start working with it. So, you're gonna take your red and you're gonna start rolling out. The reason why I continuously cut, because once it gets to a certain point, it's harder to roll, and sometimes it'll roll back on itself. So once it gets to the point where it feels like the end is gonna like start rolling back upon itself, I just cut it in half and continue rolling to the thickness I want. So this is about how thick I want my thread to be. And it's, what do I use it? Maybe a little bit like thicker than maybe like a little bit thicker than a spaghetti noodle, an uncooked spaghetti noodle. So I'll start from this side. For me, it's more comfortable to work from this side, but so I'm going to start at the bottom with you can either use like your screwdriver tip, your silicone, I call it a screwdriver tip, your flathead, or your pointer tip. You're going to, that little pointed end, you're just going to tuck it up underneath the middle part of your spool. And then you're going to start winding. You're going to make sure that your clay is both on this base, and then for right now, it's touching the bottom of your spool. And if you are looking down, there shouldn't be any like air or holes or gaps. So once you get back to the beginning of where you tucked your thread in, you're gonna start going up. And when you use your finger you're not pushing it in, you're just making sure that the clay is sticking to each other. This is a good tool to have during this, because when you get to the end, like, you just want to give it use it to place it. Take your finger and you can secure it in place, and then you're going to start again. roll it out. Again, for me anyways, and now it's starting to, so the size of a spaghetti noodle, uncooked spaghetti noodle, is where I want to be. So from where you left off, I'm just going to start back, make sure I get those, start stacking those layers. Keep going. Roll out some more. You'll probably end up doing this like 10 times, depending on how long you can get your rolls to be. Just keep turning as you work. That's why I like to have the parchment paper underneath. Now for me, I like to make sure that you can't see, like I'll check every once in a while and see if any of the white from the base clay is peeking out. If it is, I just take one of my tools and I give it a nudge down. And we keep doing, we keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay. Just keep going around. I know this is kind of boring, but so just keep going, keep going, keep going until See, you can look. You can see where the white peeks out. So I'm just going to give it a quick push down. And to me, it doesn't really matter if like the threads aren't completely even or going straight across, because you know, sometimes after you use your thread, like they kind of may get unwoven or a little droopy here or there or whatever. So we keep going until this whole thing is filled up. That's why I was saying that if you go too thin, it can take forever to fill. And I actually did that with my first Cinderella, where they were sitting on the spool. I made the thread super, super thin. And it took me forever to fill. Now, another you could do, if you don't squeeze, put too much pressure, you can actually hold this in your hand. So that way, as you go, you can make sure when you're laying your thread on your piece, you can make sure that there's no white gaps or pockets that you have to fix later. You can do it as you go. This is the other part that takes the longest for at least doing a spool of thread, is threading the spool. So Thanksgiving is in a couple days. I hope that everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. I do want to say that I apologize that it actually took me longer to get this done than I anticipated, because we had some family stuff to do that we couldn't cancel on. And then after we got done with that, Zoe got really, really sick. She got some crud and then turned around and gave it to our daughter, our other daughter, Jocelyn. And then me and my husband ended up getting it. And then we started getting better for about 2 or 3 days. The girls go back to school. And then Jocelyn gets sick again, but this time she brings home flu A and then gave it to the rest of us. So we were down for a week with flu A, which was not fun at all. And then after we got done with that, we were getting ready for the Pride auction that Clark was representing or hosting. And then we had to get ready for the opening of the pre-order for pixie sketch because we knew that we put that on hold, but we wanted to make sure that everything as far as like color correction and stuff like that was fixed. There wasn't going to be an issue. But not only that, we had Christmas orders to get out, and we had retail that we had to get off the shelves because it was just taking up too much room. And now that Thanksgiving is here, I wanted to get these finished, and I had a little bit of time. I wanted to get these finished up before family got in for Thanksgiving. And then with having to start processing the Love is Love here very shortly, and we needed to get Christmas retail done because that is a time sensitive, like if you don't get it soon, then you're going to have to sit on it and wait for next year. So there's been a lot going on here, and being sick for basically 2 weeks, like I needed to get caught up on a lot of stuff. So once I got caught up on that, I was able to actually sit down and get this finished up. And right now I'm just babbling because I know this is boring and I don't want you just sitting there in total silence. So I did this sneak peek of the Golden Girls. Is anybody excited for that? I know I am. I don't even watch the Golden Girls anymore. It's more of a like background noise because I can at this point in time I can pretty much listen to anything they're saying and what's going on or what episode they're on, but I still love them, whether it's watching or listening. I'm hoping this is done soon. Speaking of TV shows, is anybody have the Disney Plus? We ended up getting it. I haven't actually really had time to sit down and like really look through it. I've played a couple of here. I've played a couple movies on it. Of course, Sword in the Stone. And then my husband, he likes to watch the National Geographics on it. But, like, I'm a huge Marvels fan, but I haven't got to sit down and actually had a chance to go through those. So I'm hoping that, because we don't go out on Black Friday, because I think it gets a little too crazy, especially with traffic, and we did go out one year, a couple years ago, and it was just like, we couldn't even move. We couldn't even walk anywhere. I think it was Target was having like a sale on sound bars. And my husband wanted to get one for the living room, and they had a really good deal on it. And so we went, and it was a madhouse. Like, you couldn't walk anywhere. You couldn't, like, it was like you couldn't even, you just stood there because you hadn't, it was so packed, you had nowhere to walk. So ever since then, we were just like, if we can't get it online, if they're not doing Black Friday online, then we're just not going to go out because it's crazy. So I think we're almost done. We're almost done. We're almost there. Maybe a couple more. And we can attach Edna. And pop her in the oven. I feel like the Wicked Witch from Hansel and Gretel when I say we'll just pop her in the oven. I've been thinking about some new designs or ideas anyways. I'm hoping that I'm going to try to make it a resolution to draw some more of my own stuff, to sit down and make time. I know for a while I was doing like, I felt like I was getting rusty on drawing, and like I was losing some of the the skill that I had built up in being able to like draw in Photoshop, and like I was forgetting how to do stuff because I hadn't really taken time to draw in so long. So I started doing that 30 minutes a day sketch, 10 minutes a day sketch. And I was doing good for a while, but then life happened, and I really didn't set time aside for it. But I know I've started a couple of projects that I do want to finish. That, I mean, I've even showed like some sketches or previews of them or works in progress or stuff like that. So I'm hoping that this year that I make it a resolution to at least get some of those that I've started done, and possibly start on some more in drawing myself. I mean, I love that we do work with other artists and support them. You know, that we're able to help support their passion. But then again, you know, I've always loved drawing. I've always loved art. And I haven't been able to do that for a while. So I'm hoping that this year is different. I'd be able to start doing a little bit more with that. So we'll see. It feels weird. I feel like I'm just, I mean, I know that you guys are going to watch the video to do the sculpt along. Like I said, I don't want you just sitting there in silence while I try to finish, you know, some of this stuff up, but I feel silly. I feel like I'm talking to myself. But then again, I guess people always say, well, as long as you don't answer yourself. So I haven't answered myself. I'm not really talking to myself. I'm talking to you all. At first, my husband, he really didn't know what I was doing. It's like, when I ran out there to change my shirt to wait, it's like, are you okay? Are you, like, talking to yourself? Like, no, I'm recording a video. Oh, that makes more sense. Okay, so we're almost done. Now, when you start winding your thread, you do want to go up a little bit. Like, if you look here, you can see where the red is coming up just a little bit over the white. And we want to do that because we want to make sure that when we put the top on, that none of the white is peeking out. So, I think what we'll do is we'll put one more layer on right here. Okay, so I'm going to start here. And then I think it's a nice little, if you let the thread hang down like that, it just looks like a loose thread that's being, it's came off part of the spool. It's just hanging down. So now that we've got all of our thread on there, basically, I think I might need to do one more right here. We can put our top on, and then we can also put our top on, and then we can also get Edna secured on the top as well. So, all right. So now that we're good with the thread, take the bottom off. See, got a little piece of thread hanging off of there. So we got the middle done now, and it's all threaded. It looks like thread. We're gonna set the top on here. Let's see. I'm going to, how I did it before, with like looking down like this, just so I can make sure everything is. A little trick, you can take your blade and just check, like, so yeah, okay. So this is, all right. So now we're gonna press down a little bit. Now on this one, you can't see it, but if you look on a regular spool of thread, there's always like a hole in the middle. I don't want to put an actual hole, so I just take the ball tool and I just press down, and in doing that, it also helps secure everything together. So I just go in the middle and make an indentation of a mock hole. So now that that's done, our spool is done. See? So now I want to clean my hands before I touch Edna, because even though she has been baked in the oven, the wet clay for my hands can, and especially with red, because red will show up on anything, whether it's light colors, dark colors. The pigment can actually kind of stain a little bit. So I want to, because we were working, and even though I'm like washing my hands with, or scrubbing my hands down with the baby wipes, if we were to go, and that's, if we were to go work with another piece of clay, I would actually get up and wash my hands in the sink with soap and water, because even though your hands look clean, like there's no more red on there, I'll show you in a minute, they're not. They still have red pigment on them. And if you're working with any light colors, like it will definitely transfer. So if you look at my hands, right, pretty much clean. But if I take, this is that piece of clay that you can, there's a slight pink tint to it now, because red is just it really does. It's red is very pigmented, and it does, like, the color transfers like bad. So see, and my board did not look like it had any red on it whatsoever, but it obviously did. Okay, so now that our spool is done, we're gonna go ahead and take our Edna, and we're gonna stick her on. So this part of her foot is, it's too long, which is fine. I'd rather it be too long and we have to cut it, rather than not be long enough and there's no way to secure it. So this part of the foot is gonna go all the way down, so it'll still be secure. Just we need to cut this little piece off. And you'll know where to cut once you try to stick her in the clay. Okay, so now that we have her indentation, I stuck her in, and you can see the holes where the toothpicks are in, and you can see the indentation from her feet. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a little dab of liquid clay in her feet indentation, and then some liquid clay inside those little holes from the toothpicks. And that liquid clay, when it cooks, it'll turn hard, and it will actually also help secure her in place. Now, the liquid clay looks it looks obviously white right there, but when you do cook it, it'll come out clear. But if you're not comfortable, if you still want to, clean it up a little bit, just take a paintbrush and just wipe the stuff that is spilling out. Just wipe it away. So now you're going to, this is what she looks like. She's all done. So now that she's ready to be baked, you're just going to set this whole thing on a piece of parchment paper. And again, you're going to cook her at 100, or not 100, 200 degrees, and I would say 200 degrees at 15 minutes. Because by now she's pretty much, by all the times that we did a soft bake on her, she's pretty much done. But because it is a lower temperature, she's not gonna, she won't burn. But I also would suggest putting draping a piece of aluminum foil, because if the top does get too hot, you wouldn't really be able to tell on her hair because it's black, but if it does get too hot and your rack is too close to the top of the oven, you might be able to get like burn marks on her nose. So in order to prevent that, just go ahead and lay a piece of aluminum foil over the top. Pop her in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes and at 200 degrees. When the time is up for that, do not take her out. Don't mess with her until she's completely cooled off. Because until she's completely cooled off and the clay is completely hard, there is a chance that if you pick her up, that she could become separated because the clay is not totally bonded together yet. So Edna is done. The only thing that we have left to do is this. And I don't need to tell you how to paint. So this is a polyurethane, fast drying. I use clear satin. There's also a polyurethane that is, it's water based. But there is another one that it has a blue label. It's water based, but it is also, it was something else. I wanted to try it because I haven't tried it before. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that one. That's the one that I use. Now, there is this stuff. And Sculpey makes a version of their own. It's the glaze. I've used it in the past when I first started. I wouldn't use it now, just because while it does its job in the beginning, after time goes by, your piece, especially with lighter colors, they can yellow, and sometimes the clay can break down. With this stuff right here, like, I've never had any problems with discoloration or the clay breaking down after a certain amount of time. It's better than that, and it's better than the clay company's version of the glaze, and it's cheaper. Like this, which is, how many ounces does it even say? It's 35 or 1.18 full ounces, costs the same amount as this, which is 8 ounces, and it'll last a lot longer. So all you do is you just take your brush and you just brush it on. Now, after your piece gets done cooking, you can go through a final like touch up where you use your acetone to, like, for your spool or your thread, or even if you find like anything that you might have missed with Edna, you can go ahead and do another touch up. Just be aware that once you put that polyurethane on, you won't be able to do any more touch ups. So make sure that everything is exactly how you want it, as far as like dust specks or fingerprints or anything like that, before you put that glaze on. Once you put that glaze on, there's no fixing it. I mean, if you take the glaze off with like paint thinner or anything like that, your clay will dissolve. Your piece will be ruined. So That's one thing that I recommend, is making sure that before you glaze, you get all of the dust specks or your fingerprints or whatever it is that you want off before you glaze. So we're going to go ahead and pop her in the oven, and I want to say thank you for joining us for the sculpt along. And again, I do apologize. It took me a little longer than I anticipated to get it out. We just had a lot of stuff going on, and then we got sick, and then we had to play catch up from being sick, and it's just one thing after another. So I hope you guys enjoy, and if you are doing the Gus Sculpt along, I will see you there. So thank you, and I hope everyone had an awesome time and learned some new stuff and was able to distress a little bit. So thank you, and I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving.